Hey, what's up, the VC here, coming at you with another video about anything and everything. Nothing's off the table. And I welcome all opinions. Alright, so, that's what it's all about. It's all about common sense and speaking my piece, And, speaking my piece, I offer peace as well. So, with that, subscribe to my YouTube or follow me on Rumble. Let me see here. Let me pull it up on the right page here. Is this it? Oh, there it is. Alright, so without further ado, YouTube, Rumble, that's what it's all about. Alright, so let's take a look at this here. I found this kind of funny, alright, yesterday. And Trump really always calls them out, alright, and when it comes to news coverage, right, and how he always refers to news organizations like CNN and NBC and all that as fake news, because as you've seen over the past year, how slanted media has been, liberal media, has been, which is your typical media you see out there, right? CNN, NBC, MSNBC, CBS, ABC, right? It's all skewed left, heavily left, right? And anything that Trump says or does, it's all bad. Everything's bad, Orangeman's bad, and Hitler, and all this other crap, right? So, anytime Trump speaks to the media, he'll always call it like it is, and it's just funny. And even the Homeland Secretary here with Kristi Noem yesterday was talking about how fake news, because news depicts, these gangs as, something that, they're not, right, which is being innocent. We'll cover that as well. So let's take a look at this right here. I thought it was pretty funny. And Trump will just call it never stops, like it is.
There comes a point when it's time to live life differently.
Let's hear the question from this very low-rated anchor at CB.
Thank you, President. Do you plan to ask President Bukele to help return the man who your administration says
referring to Caitlin Collins,
the man who was mistakenly deported to El Salvador?
Well, let me ask Pam. Would you answer that question?
Sure, President. First and foremost, he was illegally in our country. He had been illegally in our country, and in 2019, two courts, an immigration court and an appellate.
So you have the El Salvador president, you have Trump, J.D. Vance there, you have Marco Rubio, you have the AG here, Pam Bondi, Kristi Noem here. Those are the faces I could recognize. I think that's like his, it's not chief of staff, but a right-hand person to Trump as well. I forgot her name.
Immigration court ruled that he was a member of MS-13 and he was illegally in our country. Right now, it was additional paperwork had needed to be done. That's up to El Salvador if they want to return him. That's not up to us. The Supreme Court ruled, President, that if, as El Salvador wants to return him, this is international matters, foreign affairs, if they wanted to return him, we would facilitate it, meaning provide a plane.
So will you return him?
And you are doing a great job. Thank you.
Thank
Stephen Miller, wait a minute. Can you just also respond to that question? Because, it's asked by CNN, and they always ask it with a slant, because they're totally slanted because they don't know what's happening. That's why nobody's watching them. But would you answer that question also?
Yes, gladly. So, as Pam mentioned, there's an illegal alien from El Salvador. So, with respect to you, he's a citizen of El Salvador. So it's very arrogant even for American media to suggest that we would even tell El Salvador how to handle their own citizens as a starting point. As two immigration courts found that he was a member of MS-13. When President Trump declared MS-13 to be a foreign terrorist organization, that meant that he was no longer eligible under federal law, which I'm sure you know, you're very familiar with the INA, that he was no longer eligible for any form of immigration relief in the United States. So he had a deportation order that was valid, which meant that under our law, he's not even allowed to be present in the United States and had to be returned because of the foreign terrorist designation. This issue was then, by a district court judge, completely inverted, and a district court judge tried to tell the administration that they had to kidnap a citizen of El Salvador and fly him back here. That issue was raised to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said the district court order was unlawful, and its main components were reversed 9-0 unanimously, stating clearly that neither Secretary of State nor the President could be compelled by anybody to forcibly retrieve a citizen of El Salvador from El Salvador, who again is a member of MS-13, which, as I'm sure you understand, rapes little girls, murders women, murders children, is engaged in the most barbaric activities in the world, and I can promise you, if he was your neighbor, you would move right away.
So you don't plan
But
to
the
ask for
Supreme
anything
Court's
to get him
asking
back?
to,
And
that-
what was the ruling in the Supreme Court, Steve? Was it 9-0?
Yes, it was a 9-0
In our favor?
in our favor against the district court ruling.
They explained everything about what it is about that Maryland guy. All right, so you're talking about MS-13, but I mean, let's just start off the bat. He's here illegally. Doesn't matter. He's already been declared deported before. That's just already done. Then he's MS-13. All right. I mean, he's a foreign terrorist organization, right? Yeah, consider foreign terrorist. He's an El Salvador resident, citizen. I mean, then some lower court tried to step in the way, like they've been trying to do, act like they got some clout when they got no clout, to step in and say, oh no, you can't do that because he's, whatever, due process bullshit, right? And so the Supreme Court stepped in and said, no, you're just like out of your jurisdiction. You got no clout, dude. Supreme Court said, like they said twice now, they repeatedly said, 9-0. They could clearly deport the guy and don't need to bring him back. But if they were ordered to bring him back, he's already an El Salvador citizen. So in order to go in there to go get him to bring him back, if they were to follow the court order, that would be kidnapping, that would be whatever it is to bring him back into foreign land, right? But if he's already back in his native country, I think they were saying their hands are tied. They're done, unless whatever the president of El Salvador, who's present when they're speaking about all this, can speak up for that Maryland guy.
Saying that no district court has the power to compel the foreign policy function of the United States. As Pam said, the ruling solely stated that if this individual at El Salvador's sole discretion was sent back to our country, that we could deport him a second time.
Well,
No version of this legally ends up with him ever living here because he is a citizen of El Salvador. That is the president of El Salvador. Your questions about it, per the court, can only be directed to him.
I asked
¿Usted lo
President
liberaría,
Bukele, what is
Presidente
can President Bukele weigh in on this? Do you plan to return him?
well, I guess,
Like, is CNN stupid? They just asking stupid questions. Like why would they even be compelled to return him to the United States for what?
I'm supposed to have suggested that I smuggle a terrorist into the United States, right?
It's
I mean,
always
how can I return him to the United States? Like, I smuggle him into the United States, or what do I do? Of course, I'm not gonna do it. It's like, the question is preposterous. How can I smuggle a terrorist into the United States? I don't have the power to return him to the United States.
but you could release him inside El Salvador.
Yeah, but I'm not releasing, we're not very fond of releasing terrorists into our country. I mean, we just turned the murder capital of the world into the safest country of the Western Hemisphere, and you want us to go back into releasing criminals so we can go back to being the murder capital of the world? No, that's not going to happen.
Well, they'd love to have a criminal, released into our
Yeah,
country.
Democrats love criminals.
There's a
They
fascination.
would love it.
Yeah.
They're sick, these are sick people. Do you have something to say about
Yeah, I mean, Stephen outlined it. I don't understand what the confusion is. This individual is a citizen of El Salvador. He was illegally in the United States and was returned to his country. That's where you deport people, back to their country of origin, except for Venezuela that wasn't refusing to take people back, or places like that. I can tell you this, Mr. President. No, the foreign policy of the United States is conducted by the President of the United States, not by a court. And no court in the United States has a right to conduct the foreign policy of the United States.
Yeah, not some lowly
And
district court
And that's
either.
what the Supreme Court held, by the way, to Marco's point. The Supreme Court said exactly what Marco said. that no court has the authority to compel the foreign policy function of the United States.
Yeah.
We won a case 9-0, and people like CNN are portraying it as a loss, as usual, because they want foreign terrorists in the country who kidnap women and children. But President Trump...
Yeah, I don't get why
foreign terrorists
progressive
are usually
liberal
illegal to get
media
in the
and
country,
just people in
which, by the
general
way, is a 90-10
are advocating for illegals and foreign terrorists and all that stuff. I don't get it. It just doesn't make any sense.
Well, Mr. President, you said that if the Supreme Court said someone needed to be returned, that you would abide by that. You said that on Air Force One just a few days ago. And they said that it must be facilitated.
Why don't you just say, isn't it wonderful that we're keeping criminals out of our country? Why can't you just say that? Why do you go over and over? And that's why nobody watches you anymore. You know, you have no credibility. Go ahead.
President Trump, thank you so much. How many illegal criminals
funny.
are you
Just
on
trashing on Caitlin Collins.
to El Salvador? And President Bukele, how many are you willing to take from the U.S.?
As many as possible. And I just asked the president, you know, it's this massive complex that he built, jail complex. I said, can you build some more of them, please? As many as we can get out of our country that were allowed in here by incompetent Joe Biden through open borders. Open borders. You probably hear open borders and you can't even understand it because nobody can understand it. Nobody smart or with common sense can understand it. So we have millions of people that should not be in this country that are dangerous, not just people, because we have people, but we have millions of people that are murderers, drug dealers. They've been allowed to come into our country by other countries that were very smart. When they heard that this very low IQ president, and by the way, I took my cognitive exam as part of my physical exam, and I got the highest mark, and one of the doctors said, sir, I've never seen anybody get that kind of, that was the highest mark. I hope you're happy with that, although they haven't been bugging me too much to take a cognitive, but I did do my physical and it was released. I hope you're all happy with it. I notice there's no question, so probably you are. But the cognitive, they said to me, sir, would you like to take a cognitive test? I said, did Biden take one? No. Did anybody take one? No, not too many.
Yeah, so if no one's taking it, why would he be forced to take it? Especially Biden.
I said, what about Obama? Did he take one? No, he didn't take one either. I said, let me be the only one to take one. But I've actually taken them 3 times already. I like taking them because they're not too tough for me to take. But we had a great physical exam, so I know you're going to ask that. And the doctors who are total professionals, Walter Reed Medical Center, they're great people. And I visited a soldier that was badly wounded, incredible soldier, lost his leg.
Biden probably never took one cognitive.
Spent a lot of time with him. I met
Ever.
great with his mother, and it was really a very great thing. They do a phenomenal job. I just want to say, Walter Reed, I was there for, 5-6 hours. You were there with me. But I took a full physical, and it came out perfecto, so that's good. And she got me for a little longer.
Would the U.S. be willing to pay for those facilities to be opened if new ones were going to be built?
I'd do something. We'd help them out. Yeah, we help them. They're great facilities, very strong facilities, and they don't play games. I'd like to go a step further. I mean, I said it to Pam. I don't know what the laws are. We always have to obey the laws, but we also have homegrown criminals that push people into subways, that hit elderly ladies on the back of the head with a baseball bat when they're not looking, that are absolute monsters. I'd like to include them in the group of people to get them out of the country, but you'll have to be looking at the laws on that, Steve, okay?
We would need to set a precedent just to really show that crime doesn't pay. That there's no excuses.
Taking a hard stance on crime here in the United States.
Well, I do. I think everybody has to. The president said it better than anybody. He said, you know, you have liberty and you have to have liberty, but to have liberty, not everybody is going to be good. And, you know, some are bad because they're sick. They're mentally deranged. They're bad. Then you have to take them. If you're going to have a country, you're going to have to take those people out. And we've been doing that. But this was like an unforced error, they would call it, where we had people that may hate our country, or maybe they're just stupid people. I think they're probably stupid people more so. A lot of people said they did it for the vote. But I did better with Hispanic people than they did, because they always use Hispanic. I did better You people love me. I saw my poll numbers in your country. I'm through the roof, right? 91%. No, some people think they do it for the vote. But they don't have to do it for the vote. They cheat, they're professional cheaters. That's about the only thing they do well. So we just have had a great relationship, and it's become bigger because of a strange thing that happened. I came back. We had no war in Ukraine. We had no October 7th, Middle East problem. We had nothing. We had no inflation. We didn't have the Afghanistan, most embarrassing moment in the history of our country, the Afghanistan, not withdrawing, because I would have been out, I had it all set to bring people out with dignity and pride. That was the worst, most embarrassing moment in the history of our country, Afghanistan. We didn't have any of that. You wouldn't have had the war with Russia, Ukraine. You wouldn't have had the Middle East problem because Iran was broke. They had no money because we had secondary
All
sanctions
facts.
on and
All
auxiliary
facts.
sanctions. And now every single thing, got a problem with Iran, but I'll solve that problem. That's almost an easy one. We got to solve a war that should have never started, Ukraine and Russia, and we'll get that solved. And we have to solve problems, and we already solved inflation. If you look at the numbers are incredible, actually.
And inflation actually
Stock market's
gone
up.
down a bit.
And we're not letting other countries take advantage of this country like they have for the last 40 years. So thank you very much. You have a question, please?
Yes, Mr. President. Thank you so much.
All silence from Caitlin Collins, trying to be a defender of illegals.
Supercomputer, first time ever, right here in the United
Thank you.
States.
That's a question I like. That's true.
What is your reaction to this announcement, sir, and how will this positively benefit Americans?
All right, so we have that. All right, so let's see here. We'll continue on the fake news train that people like to. Liberal media like to spin things a certain way.
Want to handle the removals yourself.
And so,
so today, President.
They have to clarify things here because liberal media like ABC, CNN, and all that like to put their own spin on things which are not true.
Trump will host the president of El Salvador at the White House. The two are expected to discuss Trump's push to deport criminal migrants like the ones the administration already sent to the mega prison in El Salvador. Meantime, the Department of Justice says that the courts have no authority to order the administration to return the deported Maryland man back to the United States. Joining us now, the Homeland Security Secretary.
And the president was right there. The El Salvador president right there. If you had any questions about this Maryland guy, he was right there. He's not coming back. Dude's deported. He's done.
Kristi Noem. Welcome, Madam Secretary. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you for inviting me, Lawrence.
So, Madam Secretary, I'm enjoying this showdown because the Supreme Court essentially gave the courts some authority as it relates to coming up with an agreement, but it didn't say that the court could do foreign policy. In your latest filing, I found something very interesting from it. This is you, the plaintiff. This is your court filing. It says the plaintiff invite the court to exceed its own authority in the precise sort of way the Supreme Court cautioned them against. This court should decline that invitation. So it's saying if you keep getting out of line, then we'll just let the Supreme Court deal with you. Is that y'all's position?
Yes, I think that what the Supreme Court said here in this decision was a very clear message to other judges across this country, is that stop acting like you have the authority to dictate foreign policy
all these
and
lower
national
courts
security
got
decisions that the president
zero clout.
is making to protect its citizens. So this was just one of those examples of an individual that, was an MS-13 gang member, had multiple charges and encounters with the individuals here. Trafficking in his background, was found with other MS-13 gang members. Very dangerous person. And what the liberal left and the fake news are doing to turn him into a media darling is sickening. We need to stop doing this, stop allowing liberal judges to try to dictate what President Trump is doing to make America safe again. So I'm grateful for the Supreme Court's decision,
Good
and I'm
shit.
hopeful that we can have a new
fuck
path
outta here.
forward where the president and his powers are
Sorry,
recognized.
buddy.
This judge has said that he wants daily.
Can't have cake and eat it too.
I mean, shouldn't we be focused on the updates of the American people on the day-to-day that are being victimized by these criminal aliens?
Absolutely. That's what we get up every single day to make sure that we are doing, Lawrence. It's amazing what President Trump has already done by closing down the border, making sure we're enforcing our federal laws, doing all we can to identify those that are in this country that don't belong here, that are committing crimes, and we're continuing to enact policies that will give us the chance to do that. You've had quite a bit of discussion on Real ID and its implementation here in the country, and the reason that Real ID is being enforced is because it's a federal law. Joe Biden kicked the can to May 7th, and this Real ID is going to just empower the states to make sure we're checking people's residences. Their current legal status will be verified. We're going to make sure that people who are getting Social Security numbers in this country aren't voting in states. The states have the power and the information to ensure election integrity. And here at the federal level, that information is not going to be any biometric information. It'll just...
I don't think there's anything wrong with voter ID to verify that you're actual citizens here, because you should be a citizen to be able to vote, not some resident, not some illegal, not some, non-citizen. Have no right to participate in elections or getting to vote who leaders are, because you're just a guest in the country in a sense until you get that status clarified.
Allow people to get an ID that they should be on our planes. They should be people that are United States residencies, and that legal status will be checked. So it'll allow us to get more information to states so that they're making sure that they're protecting their election laws as well.
So, Madam Secretary, what's the confusion on this? Because I've heard some women say that this is very difficult for them. I actually checked. Apparently, in the state of Texas, I already have a real ID. I didn't even know it was given to me.
Yeah, it's interesting, Lawrence. Some of the most conservative states are the first ones to put it in place because they recognized. South Dakota was the first state to do it. Florida, Texas. We already have 81% compliance of all travelers already have a real ID. And already use it. So that's why TSA is working so hard to educate people ahead of the deadline to get that other small percentage educated so that it can be operated and put into place smoothly to ensure that people who are on traveling in our country, that we know who they are, that they live here, that we know what their legal status is, and that we can make sure we share that information and states have that information. We want the states to be compliant in this, which is a database that they have access to that the federal government doesn't use for any purposes.
So, Madam Secretary, Antonio Gracias, who works under Elon Musk, is reportedly going to lead this specialized DOGE immigration task force to help you develop some infrastructure within your department. What can you tell us about that?
Well, I've met Antonio, and he's brilliant. He's going to be working to make sure that individuals who got Social Security numbers in this country should be using them for the right things, and they shouldn't be on our benefit programs. We have over 6,000 individuals that have been identified through their work already that have been on the terrorist watch list, that they are known criminals.
How does that happen, Madam Secretary?
How
does that happen?
It happens when you put a train wreck like Joe Biden in the White House, and it's going to be a lot of work to clean it up. But just in the last 4.5 years, we've had over 9 million people get Social Security numbers that are not U.S. citizens. So they may be people who have some sort of legal status, but a lot of them are illegals that were given a Social Security number in just the last 4.5 years. That we're going to have to figure out if they should be here, if they are here legally under a program. And if they are here illegally, then they certainly shouldn't be using that Social Security number to be on our programs, and they should be removed or given the opportunity to go home on their own. That's the one thing President Trump would like, is everybody to be given the opportunity to go home if they would wish to.
And real
real
quickly, I only got about 30 seconds, Madam Secretary. This meeting between the El Salvadorian president and President Donald Trump, does that indicate that the flights will continue, that the deportation, that you guys aren't going to allow the courts to stop you?
Oh, yeah, that's an easy answer. That's all been clarified. President was there. It's all good. All right, so interesting stuff here. See what else we got going on over here. All right, so, yeah, fascinating stuff. So, yeah, don't bust me with some bullshit, all right? And look at this. Josh Shapiro's governor's mansion in Pennsylvania, they escaped the fire, but the arsonist was obviously, guess what? a liberal, progressive dude. All right, so funny how that is, right? Supposedly they're peaceful protesters and all that, but there was something wrong, a screw loose with this guy, and he wanted to take it out on the governor, so that's what happened. Try to take it out on the governor. Governor escaped what could have been his life. So that's what happened there. What else we got going on? Oh, here we go. LA County recommend budget cuts. Let's go see what fake news
We are just about
NBC
3 hours
says.
away from LA leaders weighing in on the county's new proposed budget. Now, that budget recommends some very crucial cuts, leaving many questions like from where and for what programs. NBC4's Michelle Valles is live in downtown LA with some of these proposals. This has a lot of people, Michelle, very nervous.
Absolutely. You know, the budget, good morning, everyone, is at $48 billion, lower than years past. But the county CEO is really trying to avoid layoffs. But to do that, they have to make $89 million in budget cuts. That's to help pay for the fire recovery costs in January and the sex abuse settlement cases, which are the largest in U.S. history. To close that budget gap, the county would leave 310 vacant positions unfilled and would have multiple government departments really slashing their budget by 3%. But again, this would mean no layoffs in the 2025-26 fiscal year. The close to $48 billion budget includes $4 billion to pay off the nearly 7,000 sexual abuse claims against county employees, mostly from probation camps and juvenile halls. The settlements are expected to be paid out through a combination of county funds, budget cuts, and borrowing over a number of years if approved.
Man.
This is not a 1 year, not even a 1 decade impact. We anticipate that we will be paying hundreds of millions of dollars every year until 2030.
Into perpetuity.
And that is money being taken away from county services, except for homeless programs, youth development, parks and recs. Those will stay, according to the proposal. The county CEO says we are in uncharted territory, adding that there was a 41% decline in home sales, which impacted the property tax revenue. So she's going to propose this budget today with the board, and then next month there will be public hearing. The final recommendations for the budget will come in June. In downtown LA, I'm Michelle Valles for Today in LA.
You know why? Because it goes further down the rabbit hole, right? This right here.
The truth is, behind closed doors,
California leaders have failed LA.
My secret sin at age 10.
Your city used to be incredible, livable, vibrant, fun, cool, great stores, interesting restaurants, a magnet for creative, hardworking people. And now the once cool parts of the city have been taken over by the homeless. I mean, that's certainly what has happened in Los Angeles. In fact, there was a while in the early aughts when downtown LA was the mecca for artists and gay couples and designers and restaurateurs, and they were going to make downtown LA incredible, extraordinary, filled with loft spaces and gyms and all sorts of stuff. And then homelessness just encroached on that part of the city. It spread from Skid Row to essentially all of downtown LA, making it really uninhabitable. A good friend of mine who was an artist in downtown LA and had
That's why
production facility and a
that's why their homeless program got kicked aside, the homeless committee, and they started a whole new county committee, which is pretty stupid. It's just going to be money moving from one place to another, but yet no solutions, no fix to the homeless problem. And it just continues, and California spent a huge amount of money and still no answers to it. It's just funny. It's all just a money just grab. That's all it is. Just money grabbing, pocketing, kickbacks, all that stuff, and no fix. In order to fix, it's not just unsheltered. It's beyond that. It's drug abuse. But they refuse to do anything with treatment facilities. And I've been saying this whole time, you got to close down prisons. You use those closed down prisons as treatment facilities.
Showroom had to close both of those because people couldn't get to her showroom because they would literally have to step over parts of homeless encampments. And every time they would call LAPD, they wouldn't do anything. It got incredibly frustrating, so she had to leave and relocate
Hey, get
to a
out of
totally
here.
different
That's
part
it, right?
of California.
And then you go to another
where,
corner spot.
People kind of fight to keep their city safe and livable, which is really sort of the baseline. I mean, that's how most cities should operate. But
I like the
somehow,
subliminal messages
Los
here.
Angeles, LA County, and really all of California, it's become okay to let homelessness just fester. And it's not cruel to want to move people off the streets. It's cruel to let
you read what
people
it's saying, it's
just
actually very
malinger
funny.
there for years and years and not force them into treatment, not force them off the streets, just let them slowly wither and die in massive encampments where women are sexually assaulted and no one is really free to come and go as they should be able to in any part of any great major American city. Well, downtown Los Angeles has become a dump, and that scourge has spread to all over LA
Democrat
and LA
run
County.
Cities
And so
are
you may
dumps.
wonder, well, why don't they tackle homelessness? Well, that's what they try and do. So, in the state, they pass bond measure after bond measure. And the ballot measure is really the only tool that voters have because the legislature is run by one party. And if real solutions don't fit into their one-party agenda, then voters take matters into their own hands. And they do things like recall governors and district attorneys. And they try and pass measures that will make their lives better. So everyone assumes, well, if I vote for this homeless measure, then homelessness will go away. Well, that isn't what has happened. The problem has only gotten worse and worse and worse. And in LA
That's why it
County,
needs
there
to stop.
are now
Stop voting for it.
75,000 homeless people.
You got to let the state figure that
45,000
out.
of them are in Karen Bass's Los Angeles. And Karen Bass, the failed mayor, who is the reason that everything I know in Love and Pacific Palisades has burned to the ground, is because of her and her lack of leadership, her mismanagement, her, horrible decision to go to Ghana during a once-in-a-generation windstorm, during dry conditions where all it took was one spark and the entire city could go up in flames, and major parts of it did. And now she wants a task force to figure out, well, who let me go to Ghana? So there was another task force that was created because a bunch of the business owners, like my friend, and residents who couldn't live their lives the way they were once able to, but they were still paying more and more taxes, they sued the city, they sued the county to try and figure out a way to figure out homelessness. So a federal judge, David Carter, came in and, put this task force together.
Good.
And they did an audit and found gross mismanagement, mostly at the hands of the Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority. And that is really the body that is tasked with taking all the money that comes in from ballot measures and dispersing it to contractors who will clean up encampments, get people housed, get people into treatment. Well, obviously, none of that is happening. Karen Bass looks to a minor 10% drop in street homelessness in Los Angeles and says, well, job done. Yeah, we don't need anyone to look here. The federal judge has said, not on my watch, you have a month to clean this up or there will be hell to pay, because people have absolutely had it, not just with homelessness, but also with
People just had
the
California
wildfires
leadership.
and now the fallout of the wildfires, the mismanagement, miscommunication,
All this
and lack of
bullshit.
enforcement for insurance companies. So the federal judge has told Karen Bass, you are on a very short leash. You have 1 month to make
Get the
everything
fuck
better,
out of here.
which she
This bitch needs to
can't.
go.
So now there is a U.S. attorney who has been appointed to oversee Los Angeles. His name is Bill Asaley. He used to be a state legislator, and now he is a federal attorney, and he is putting his own task force together to figure out how federal funds have been misappropriated. And he says if they have been stolen, if there is fraud of any...
Oh, yeah. Everything about California has been misappropriated, fraud, everything, all the above.
kind, then people will go to jail. And this is exactly
Gavin
what has to
Newsom should go
happen.
to jail.
There has to be, unfortunately, forced accountability because
Adam Schiff.
these bodies, whether it's the mayor's office or the LA County Board of Supervisors or this LA Homeless Services Authority, they can't
Liberal
do it
city
themselves.
mayors.
They are incapable of overseeing themselves. So what happens when you have all this money?
I mean, you don't have to look too far down the rabbit hole. Look at Shang Tao. She's being investigated for corruption, and she got voted out by recall. Right, and even their Alameda County DA got voted out. Same thing. It's all liberal city corruption. Luckily, London Breed got voted out of San Francisco. Right? I mean, look at all these liberal cities corrupt.
Come in, well, all these contractors show up and they start pocketing the funds. And they're like, yeah, we'll move things around. Well, then you give money to another contractor to do the exact same thing. So you have these duplicate services and there's no mechanism for accountability.
Duplicate services and no work done.
Or control to figure out when these people have done their jobs and forcing them to communicate with each other so there is not duplicative work. The city is not doing that. The county is not doing that. So now the LA County Board of Supervisors has essentially defunded. They've taken $300 million away from the Homeless Services Authority. But Bill Asaley looks at this and goes, there is $2 billion that is completely unaccounted for, that has just disappeared. And this in a state where there is a $70 billion deficit. So $2 billion, imagine what $2 billion could do for wildfire victims. Imagine what $2 billion could do for unhoused seniors in LA County. That is a lot of money, and that is absolutely gone. So they are going to essentially doge this agency and try and figure out where the money went, when it came in, who it went to, and they want receipts. How did you spend this money? Show us. Show us who you hired. Show us how you dispersed the funds. Show us that you have anything to show for it at all. And I guarantee you, most of the people they audit, they don't. So in a bureaucratic place that's run by one party and this Democrat machine that just churns out losers like Adam Schiff and Kamala Harris and Nancy Pelosi and Maxine Waters and Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass, if it's left up to them, they're not really going to hold anyone accountable. They're not going to hold anyone's feet to the fire. And that's why this U.S. attorney and this task force is so incredibly necessary. And believe it or not, there are actually members of the Board of Supervisors that are welcoming this because it should mean all of their. So anyone who has been in charge of homeless services in LA County, Los Angeles proper, or in the state of California, you need to be fired because you have failed. And when you fail, people OD on the streets. Women are assaulted. People can't send their kids to go get something at a convenience store because they're terrified they're going to be attacked by a deranged, drugged up.
Complete cleanup. Clean house all over California.
Mentally ill homeless person who has not been kept in check by the vast funding and services that should be available for just those people. And guess what? When you are out of your mind on drugs, when you have PTSD, when you are a homeless veteran, you need a lot more than just a place to live. And with the amount of money that has been provided by the state, they have more than a lot more. Karen Bass looks around and goes, yep, this is good enough. And it is absolutely horrible. And that is no way to govern. That is no way to live. And she needs to be removed from office immediately for this and for her incompetence in the wildfires. And I hope this is one of the things that follows from that. I hope there are arrests. I hope the entire system is shaken up and dismantled. Because guess what? It's not working. And Gavin Newsom wants to take the biggest county in his state that has failed homeless people of every stripe. And he wants to say, we're doing a great job and impose that on the rest of the country. I think now is the time for the spotlight to get very, very bright and burn the of the people who have been so incredibly irresponsible, because that has to end now.
There you go, see? And of course, liberal media will spin everything that Gavin Newsom and Mayor Bass doing as, oh yeah, they're doing great work. They're making progress, when there's like zero progress going on right now in terms of rebuilding LA, the homeless problem, all that stuff. All right, so that's everything. Just wanted to share with you guys today. Getting the record straight with El Salvador, the president being present on that whole Maryland guy being so-called mistakenly deported, when it's all said in everybody's face with the El Salvador president present, that the El Salvador citizen who got deported for being here illegally, who's part of a MS-13 gang, is now in that mega prison in El Salvador where he rightfully belongs, is not mistakenly sent, and he is where he's supposed to be. And you can't force an El Salvador citizen to be brought back here just because liberals are saying so. So just saying. Then, of course, you have the LA mess I just covered. Yeah, so, don't listen to the fake news that's going on out there, right? This is where it's at. That's what I'm just telling you, the other side of things, and when you see the truth that's really happening, it's like, wow, it really blows your mind how bad everything else that's going on that liberal news doesn't report, right? So be careful with the whole MSNBC and NBC and CBS and ABC and what's the other one? CNN, right? Because they got no credibility whatsoever, just lie to you all the time. All right, anyhow, that's enough of me. Subscribe, hit the bell icon. I got Rumble, got YouTube. Hit me up, follow me, all that good stuff. Thank you. I'll see you next month.